Have you ever, correctly, had a gut feeling to dislike someone who, on the surface, was a cool person that everybody else liked? What's that story? Kind of related. Not a person but a dog. Years ago I had a GF who lived at home with her sister, parents, 3 dogs and a cat. One of the dogs was a big goofy lab that loved everyone, I mean everyone. 2-year-olds could climb all over him and he loved it. Anyway, the sister had been seeing some guy for a little while, maybe a month, and she's bringing him home to meet the family for the first time. The guy hadn't even come to the door yet. The dog was in the house and went ballistic. I had never seen anything like it. He went from goofball to apex predator. Needless to say he couldn't come in the house. They had to leave. About 2 weeks later the sister comes home, he had slapped her and she ended it. She also found out that he beat his ex-wife before her. TLDR. Labrador could smell the evil on a wife beater. Edit. I am a human not a doggy, and I am a good boy. My parents had this family friend when I was around 15 to 16. Friendly, funny guy who gave me the absolute creeps. I didn't want to be alone in a room with him, he made my stomach turn. Anyway, about 5 years after I moved out of home, he wound up in court, convicted of 3, very historic, back in the 80s, cases of sexual violation, indecent assault of a girl under 12 when she was between 8 and 11, and 1 charge of rape of a girl under 16, 9-year-old girl. Sometimes our guts really know what's up. Edit. I'm that asshole that edits their comment after it gets popular and gets the poem for your Sprague treatment, holy crap, sorry. I wrote this comment at like 1 AM my time and definitely didn't expect it to blow up like this. When I woke up to my inbox, RIP, this morning I went back and double-checked the exact charges and have corrected them in my comment. The rape victim was actually younger than I remembered. I'm sorry so many of you have experienced something similar.
My sister's boyfriend. I just immediately found him to be very fake and disingenuous. But the rest of the family loved him and we found him very charming. He owned a running store franchise that was more successful than the original store and was also doing well trading on the stock market. He sold the store back to the owners for a ton of money to focus on the stock market, but this was around the time of the market crash. So to help with that he worked at the store as a salesman. They eventually got married and bought a huge house. And that's when the cops came knocking at the door to their large home with a view. He wasn't rich. He never owned a store. He was only ever a worker and had been stealing cash from the register products and selling them on eBay. The divorce came quick after that.
Ha! Another eBay creep. I have a similar story. Psychofan Jeremy, a Weasley-looking younger dude I worked with at a music shop in the UK. He was the perfect employee, early to work, stayed late every day. He'd fix things and tinker about being all helpful when there were no customers, and I was sitting around playing the expensive keyboards. I always knew he was a cunt inside. But the managers loved him for the reasons above. Had nicknames for him and shit. And then I left the job. Fast forward a few months, I go in for some guitar strings, and Jeremy's not there. Jeremy had been stealing those expensive keyboards and high-end audio equipment. That's why he was staying late all the time. He was loading the gear into his Mini out the back of the shop. He'd been at it for ages. He got sent to court, and last I heard he was paying back incremental installments of thousands of pounds worth of stolen goods. He got caught because he had left his eBay account logged on to the manager who loved him's computer, and all the gear on there tallied, in reverse chronological order, with the stuff that had been going missing. That was my chance for an I told you so, but Gordo looked hurt enough by it all already.
Similar story was a waitress at a chain steakhouse place in Texas. The girl that trained me had major seniority at this place and was the golden child of the managers. Would be fair enough, but she was a huge bitch and bossed people around and looked down on them, etc. I eventually quit that fucking place, but right before I left she was caught changing the tips on receipts by a customer. Someone had noticed and called into the restaurant. They pulled the receipt from the paperwork, and yes, the tip said $15 rather than $5. The managers thought surely this was a mistake. The GM and main fanboy of her pulled all of the receipts under her login for Pose. The stars aligned, and yes, she had been stealing hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars from customers, one transaction at a time. They had to call every customer she had that they could get a hold of through the credit card companies. The restaurant also took her to court. I wish I knew how this ended.
The girlfriend and I used to work at the same ski hill, and the place was pretty much full of seasonal employees. Revolving door status. Anyways, she got this new dude in her department that everyone thought was a super nice guy. I did not trust him. There was just something about the way he talked to female employees that just seemed weird. He was trying to gain their trust way too quick. I made my sentiments known to my girlfriend and other friends, and they thought I was just being jealous or something. I worked part-time out of town at the time, and he'd always ask me what days I was gone. It was weird. He also didn't have a car, so sometimes my girlfriend would give him a ride home, and he'd ask her to hang out at our place when I was out of town. She declined. So at the end of the season, a female friend of ours and this kid decide to rent a place together. They weren't dating, and as they're in the final steps, federal marshals show up and arrest him. Turns out he had been on the run for over a year for kidnapping and raping a girl in a different part of the country. His family had been helping him, and he took the name of his brother while on the run. Filling out the housing application somehow tipped off the marshals. Trust your instincts. When I was a boy, 7 to 8, at a coffee shop I would go to with my parents frequently, there would often be a middle-aged Asian woman hanging out. She was a regular, the baristas knew her, my parents were friendly with her. Sometimes I would play board games with my parents and her. She gave me the fucking creeps, but I couldn't pinpoint why. My parents knew I didn't like her much, but not the full extent. Anyway, the very first time I was with her without my parents there, they were starting the car or something like that, she tried to get me to come back to her house. She wouldn't take no for an answer and got pushy. When my parents came back I told them what happened and we never went there again. Edit. Apparently a lot of people are unhappy that I mentioned the woman's ethnicity. It's a descriptor. I mentioned she was Asian for the same reason I said she was middle-aged and a woman.
My former handball coach. Everybody liked him, but I had a weird feel about him. After training he would come into our showers and give out shower caps for us to use, or in the winter, he would bring us snow to play. A few years later, he got arrested for sexual assault when he went to a training camp with younger girls. Apparently he got into their tents and played with them.
So he walked into the shower with a bunch of naked girls? And no one else thought it was strange? My mom was a single mom and did the best she could. However, she thought it might be better to leave me with the neighbor than at home alone. From the age of 6, I pleaded with my mom to let me stay home alone until she got home from work, that I would be okay. My intuition was right. The neighbor was convicted of multiple murders of single mom 1 and 2 towns over when DNA evidence came into being. He only liked to date and kill non-obese women. Fortunately my mother was fat. Yo mama so fat, she survived and lives a happy life.
When I first met my birth mother's uncle I was instantly creeped out by him. He's in his 40s in a band, has heaps of friends everywhere he goes and gets on well with everyone. But I just had a horrible gut feeling and didn't trust him. He's a really touchy-feely guy, and he would try and kiss us on the lips and passed it off as just being family. Turns out he touched my birth mom and had sex with her when she was a child. My mother let us as children hang out with her rapist. His son, my birth mom's cousin, is a convicted pedophile too and just recently got out of prison. I'm so glad I was in long-term foster care. But I really wish I wasn't allowed contact with my birth family. They are truly the definition of fucked up. Edit. He's in his 50s. He was in his 40s when I met him.
Like, comment, and share. Reddit Story Topper. Subscribe now.